Thanks, Sophie. Hello, you're watching Wales Today. I'm Nick Savini. The headlines. The family of former RAF Flight Sergeant Zack Stubbings say he died from cancer caused by toxic fumes in helicopters. Now 180 others with cancer are seeking compensation.
If we can work to educate people, to make them aware so they can get the treatments alongside any civil litigation that's going on, that's the most important thing.
As a veterans group calls for swift action, the Ministry of Defence says it doesn't believe engine emissions were a risk to health. Also tonight. After all the drama over welfare reform, we ask what next for claimants across Wales in the debate over the future of benefits.
Hello from Switzerland. We'll be hearing from Sophie Ingle, back from long-term injury. And this is how the players have been spending some of their downtime, taking in some of the breathtaking views this country has to offer.
The centrepiece of the room, which everybody asks about because it's Don't Look Back, an Angle piano.
Looking back to the 90s ahead of the Oasis reunion gig in Cardiff, we're at the studios in Monmouth where so many of their great songs were first recorded.
We need more bands like Oasis, and it's hard to be a band like Oasis nowadays in today's business, really. So I don't think there'll ever be another one.
Good evening. We begin tonight with the story of Zack Stubbings, a former RAF flight sergeant from Cardiff who died of blood cancer at the age of 47. He claimed it was the result of exposure to toxic fumes in the Sea King helicopters that he used to fly in. He received an out-of-court settlement from the Ministry of Defence, although the MOD has not admitted liability. And now we can reveal his solicitor says she's handling inquiries from 180 former and current Armed Forces aircrew, all also with cancer, who are seeking compensation. Nicola Bryan has the story.
From saving lives at sea to training Prince William at RAF Valley on Anglesey, Flight Sergeant Zack Stubbings adored serving in the RAF. But at 33, everything changed. He was diagnosed with multiple myeloma, an incurable form of blood cancer. His wife, Anna Louise, met him through an organ donation charity she set up after her husband, Stuart, and 7-year-old son, Fraser, were killed by a careless driver.
He was appreciating every day after his struggles with his illness, and I was just appreciating being part of a team again, having somebody that just completely had my back. We had so much fun. We had so many memories, and that really was key to getting us both through.
After months of research, Zack was convinced his cancer had been caused by exposure to toxic fumes while working on the Sea King military helicopter. He eventually received an out-of-court settlement from the Ministry of Defence, which did not admit liability.
Zack was never bitter. He wasn't vengeful at all. He was the most kind man, and he adored his years of service.
Zack died in January at the age of 47, and his solicitor is now handling 180 inquiries from people who believe they are also affected. 6 have received a financial settlement from the MOD, who have not admitted fault or liability.
I do feel that that's just the tip of the iceberg, because there will be people out there that, one, don't know they've got cancer, and also that will be diagnosed in the future.
Hugh James solicitors are currently pursuing claims relating to 4 types of military aircraft: the Sea King, the Westland Wessex, the Puma and the CH-47 Chinook. The Sea King was used in British military operations between 1969 and 2018 and has in the past been flown by both King Charles and the Prince of Wales. The Westland Wessex was retired in 2003. The Puma was retired in March, while the CH-47 Chinook is still in use. In February, the MOD said it was trying to determine the number of people who've served as aircrew and have been diagnosed with cancer. It also said it was testing the exhaust emissions of some military helicopters. But the boss of this veterans charity says he wants them to be more proactive.
So I don't think that the MOD are going far enough at the moment. We need to get that message out to the veterans community, get people through a screening process. We can get an early indication of cancer, and then we might be able to get a better survival rate within those veterans that are suffering.
ZAC's MS Julie Morgan wants to see PPE introduced for those still serving on the Chinook and a cancer screening programme for personnel and veterans.
I think the MOD should be as transparent as it possibly can be, and I urge the MOD to carry on their investigations as swiftly as they can, because it's owed to people.
In May, the Independent Medical Expert Group, which advises the MOD, reviewed evidence about a possible link between exhaust emissions from Sea King helicopters and rare cancers, and found insufficient evidence to establish a clear causal relationship. The MOD said, "Any death is a tragedy, and our thoughts remain with the family and friends of Zac Stubbings. We take the health of our personnel extremely seriously and regularly review our processes to ensure we're doing our utmost to keep our people safe." It said while it believed there was no risk to health, conducting monitoring would enable it to demonstrate this.
Obviously, the air would then circulate around.
Anna Louise says she's determined to continue Zac's work to raise awareness of the issue.
Nicola Bryan reporting there. A watchdog has found Eluned Morgan broke the Senedd's rules by failing to declare she'd received money from a trade union. The First Minister referred to Unite while talking about Tata's Port Talbot Steelworks in the Chamber last year. Her report says she should have declared an interest at the time as a member of Unite, who had received just over £3,500 in sponsorship from the union. The Senedd Standards Committee said the passing reference to Unite breached the Code of Conduct, but that no further action was required. The Welsh Government is considering a package of support for businesses in Holyhead affected by the closure of the port in December after a terminal was damaged. Transport and North Wales Secretary Ken Skates told the Senedd the local authority had submitted a funding request last week and it was being appraised as quickly as possible. The port still hasn't fully reopened. The Welsh Labour MP and Cabinet member Nick Thomas-Symonds has insisted the moral case to reform welfare remains for the UK government, despite chaotic scenes during the key vote on the issue in the Commons last night. But the Torfaen MP has admitted that ministers moved too quickly with their reforms, prompting a huge potential rebellion. So, what does it all mean for the hundreds of thousands of people in Wales claiming benefits? Here's our political editor, Gareth Lewis.
Joshua is one of the faces behind the statistics. Wales would be disproportionately affected by any changes to welfare payments. We have some of the highest claimant rates across the whole of the UK. He spoke to us yesterday in London as he protested against planned cuts to personal independence payments. What does he make, then, of yesterday's last-minute U-turn to allow a review to report back before any changes to PIP are made?
I describe it as a small win because it's a way of giving time to the community and actually getting MPs to go out into their surgeries, speaking to disabled people, speaking to disabled people who are non-verbal, so that they could take time to understand what their needs are.
It was fiery and emotional in the Commons earlier. The Prime Minister was challenged to rule out tax cuts to pay for the changes, which originally were supposed to save £5 billion.
People out there are frightened. Can he, Mr. Speaker, can he reassure them by ruling out tax rises in the autumn budget?
Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, she knows that no Prime Minister or Chancellor ever stands at the dispatch box and writes budgets in the future. That isn't what they did, it isn't what we did, and she knows it.
At one point, there were tears from Chancellor Rachel Reeves. A spokesperson later clarified she was dealing with a personal matter. Some of her colleagues have blamed an altercation with the Speaker yesterday. Labour ministers have been trying to mop up the damage all day and accept they moved too quickly with their original plans.
What this is about now is looking forward. It is about accepting the need for reform and moving forward now with that reform. But also, yes, taking people with us, taking parliamentary colleagues with us, but also ensuring that the review is co-produced. And that's crucial.
So do people like Joshua now feel that their voices will be heard by the UK government's review?
What I would like to see is actually disabled people having the chance to go into the House of Commons and speak like a testimony to say, this is how and this is what I use my PIP for, this is how I'm being treated. please listen and take my voice seriously.
There were extraordinary scenes here yesterday. The UK government did win the vote, but the real story is what it took to get them there. Yesterday was a difficult day for the government. Today was too. There will, though, be more difficult days to come.
Hank Gareth is with me now. So where do they go next?
Well, look, a day that'll be remembered, I think, for as much as what was seen as what was said, Nick, whatever the reason for Rachel Reeves's distress. Downing Street tonight stressing she has the full backing from the Prime Minister. Questions perhaps too remaining over Liz Kendall, the Secretary of State who brought in these changes that changed again and again with all those U-turns. What about the Prime Minister himself and his credibility and his control of the party? Interesting to hear Nick Thomas-Symonds trying to move this on to the review that will look at PIP eligibility now. But they'll be back again on Wednesday in the House of Commons because there's another debate scheduled on these plans. Will it have calmed down by then?
And Kemi Badenoch was alluding to this, wasn't she? How are they going to pay for this?
Yeah, that's the big question. So £5 billion originally earmarked as savings from the welfare changes. Pat McFadden, Senior Minister on the radio this morning, saying we will stick to our manifesto when it comes to tax rises. So that means income tax, VAT, national insurance would not go up. But he did warn of financial consequence. Plenty of other tax options too for them. Which brings us on to the Welsh perspective. Joshua, actually well aware there's a Senedd election next year and was making the point, look, if you're an MS or prospective MS and you want my vote, yes, they're two different governments, but lobby the UK government to make sure that they don't cut PIP. And if those taxes do go up, Nick, they would normally go up at the start of a financial year. They'd be announced in the budget this November. When is the start of the financial year? It's next April. When is that? 1 month before a Senedd election. Now, the last thing Welsh Labour, struggling in the polls already, want is their colleagues in London putting up taxes 4 weeks before we go to the polls.
OK, Gareth, thank you. A woman accused of murdering her 2-year-old grandson has said she was ashamed she didn't do anything to stop his ill treatment. Ethan Ives Griffiths died from a severe head injury after collapsing at his grandparents' home in Garden City in Flintshire in 2021. Kerry and Michael Ives deny his murder, and along with their daughter Shannon Ives, they also deny causing or allowing his death and child cruelty. Sarah Easdale has more.
The court was again shown CCTV footage of the Ives back garden in Garden City. It shows Michael Ives carrying 2-year-old Ethan by one arm, being bounced on the trampoline but unable to get up, and walking with his hands covering his head. In the witness box at Mould Crown Court, his grandmother, Kerry Ives, was asked about the way in which Ethan was treated, where she was seen in the footage to be looking on and doing nothing. Mrs Ives was asked if she would accept that the treatment was cruel, and she said it is. Asked by the prosecution barrister Caroline Rees-Casey if she had watched ill treatment and let it pass, she agreed that she had, and that she now felt ashamed of it. She also agreed that both she, Michael Ives and Shannon Ives had all neglected Ethan and failed to keep him safe. Kerry Ives was also asked about the 14th of August 2021, the day Ethan suffered his fatal collapse, and what had happened in the living room beforehand. She said she had not seen her husband touch him and that she had not either. She said an 18-minute delay in her calling an ambulance was because she panicked and froze. When Ethan Ives Griffiths was taken to hospital that night, 40 separate injuries were noted on his face and body. But today, Kerry Ives said she hadn't noticed any of them. And her husband, though he showered Ethan every other day, had never mentioned any bruises. He was also severely underweight, described in court as skin and bone. Kerry Ives admitted to the jury that she knew he was losing weight. But apart from asking Shannon Ives to make a doctor's appointment, she said she had done nothing. Kerry Ives told the court that neither she nor Michael Ives had ever hit any of their children or grandchildren. She accepted Ethan's death was as the result of an assault, but said neither of them were responsible. The trial continues.
Sarah Easdale reporting there. Still to come before 7. We head back to the 90s and the Monmouthshire studio, where Oasis created so many of their great songs, which are about to take centre stage again.
And June was warmer and wetter than average across Wales. How is the first part of July shaping up? Join me later for that full forecast.
A A former teacher who swore at pupils while under the influence of alcohol in a classroom has been banned from teaching in Wales. A fitness to practice hearing was held into allegations of unacceptable professional conduct against Alice Ashton, who taught at Ysgol Bro Caerenion near Welshpool. Craig Duggan reports.
Alice Ashton taught here at Ysgol Bro Caerenion for just over one term from September 2023. In January 2024, a pupil's parent called the school to complain about a lesson that Miss Ashton had given the day before. When the school commissioned an independent investigation, Miss Ashton resigned. When describing the lesson in question, a number of pupils said that Miss Ashton was more lively than usual. They said that she'd been dancing around the class, trying to get pupils to join in. One girl said she could smell alcohol on the teacher and that Miss Ashton had been taking regular swigs from a clear plastic bottle which was full of an orange-coloured liquid. Two senior teachers who tasted the liquid said it contained alcohol. Pupils also said Miss Ashton had used swear words several times during the class, some of them directed at pupils. Though the teacher denied these allegations, an Education Workforce Council committee, which also saw CCTV footage of the lesson, found that they had been proved. They banned Alice Ashton from teaching in Wales. The committee also took account of another incident that happened 4 months before the lesson here. In September 2023, Alice Ashton had referred herself to the EWC after she'd been arrested for drink driving when she was 3 times over the legal limit. Telford Magistrates Court gave her a 12-month community order and she lost her driving licence. Today, the EWC's committee chair said her misconduct was so serious that a prohibition order was necessary to protect learners and uphold professional standards. Alice Ashton did not take part in the hearing, but the committee was informed she no longer teaches and no longer lives in Wales. Craig Duggan, BBC Wales Today in Llanfair Caerenion.
To Switzerland now, and having not played a competitive game for more than a year because of a serious injury, Sophie Ingle says she is feeling more confident every day and is ready for the start of Wales's Euros campaign on Saturday. Let's get the latest from the camp in Weinfelden now with Thomas.
Yeah, with 141 caps to her name, her experience is invaluable. Well, after months, years of planning, this tournament finally got underway today with Finland taking on Iceland. Finland 1-0 up as it stands. We also learnt about the growth of the game back home. New figures reveal that the number of women and girls registered to play is up 52% in 4 years, up from around 13,000 to 19,000. And the FAW says this tournament will lead to an increase in funding of the grassroots game for women and girls. The players scaling new heights in Switzerland, taking the views, making the most of a rare few hours off this week.
You behind! Wow!
This morning, they were back at work and at training, a welcome sight. Sophie Ingle has defied the odds, recovering in time for Wales's big moment.
Every day I'm on the pitch, I feel more confident and more myself, and a lot of the girls this week actually have just said, it looks like you haven't been out for 9 months, which is obviously a compliment.
Yes, Ingle's teammates full of praise.
As younger players, we've always looked up to Soph, and off the pitch, she's someone you can always go and speak to with problems, and yeah, on the pitch, you can see what she does, so yeah, we're buzzing.
Big claims are often made about the impact of tournaments like this. But football bosses back home say there will be increased investment in the grassroots game for women and girls. Talasarn in Gwynedd last month, and a special visit from manager Frian Wilkinson. The pitch here used to look like this, now transformed. The FAW says £4.5 million has been spent across the country on artificial pitches, with protected time guaranteed for female teams. A further £4 million has been spent developing off-field and changing facilities for women and girls.
A lot of the facilities that were developed in the past were built for men, right? So there isn't things like locks on doors, cubicle showers, cubicle toilets, that sorts of things. So we're looking at how we can really develop our facilities to ensure that every woman and girl feels comfortable.
So some improvements, but it was a different story for some of these players when they started out.
That's where I started with boys teams, not many girls teams. And then we were training, especially on pre-season, it was just like a local pitch. So that's how I kind of started the career. So for us being in a tournament and for Wales and increasing, you know, participation and investment, like that's something that we can also give by qualifying for this major tournament.
Meanwhile, back home, there's no doubting their enthusiasm. Thousands of school pupils taking part in a virtual sing-along arranged by The Urdd in honour of these players. Their moment to shine will come in just 3 days' time. Yeah, beautiful scenes there, and the players will be swapping the tranquility of Weinfelden for Lucerne on Friday, there to greet them, thousands of Wales fans who've made the journey. It's at that point, I think, that the tournament will truly come alive for the players and the fans, with the opening game on Saturday afternoon.
Look forward to it, Thomas. Thank you very much. So not long to go now, and Oasis will be playing some of their greatest songs at the Principality Stadium for the first time in 16 years as Wales hosts the start of their reunion tour this weekend. Take a look at this. Noel Gallagher has already been spotted in Cardiff, travelling here by train. He'll no doubt be rehearsing some of those hits ahead of the first gig on Friday. But what you may not be aware of is that many of those songs were created not too far away at the world-famous Rockfield Studios near Monmouth, which is where our entertainment correspondent Charlotte Gallagher has been to find out how they were put together in a converted barn in the Welsh countryside.
This unassuming farm on the outskirts of Monmouth, South Wales, has been the creative cradle for some of the biggest names in music. From Queen's soaring operatics to the early sparks that launched Coldplay into global stardom, Rockfield isn't just a studio, it's a living piece of music history. Kingsley Ward founded Rockfield Studios with his brother Charles over 60 years ago. He fondly remembers hosting the Gallagher brothers when they stayed at the farm in '95.
I'm sure I remember doing that bit at the end of Wonderwall, the I remember doing it there.
They've talked about being at Rockfield and being looked after. You know, they had the meals made for them. It was essentially like being a home away from home almost.
Yeah, it was a home from home.
Because they were boys when they were here. They were very young. What were they like?
Oh, they were a proper rock band. Very loud, by the way.
Did they ever keep you up at night when you were trying to sleep?
Yes, and Anne went down and sorted them out.
What, so Anne's your wife, and what did she say to Oasis?
Yes, 4 o'clock in the morning, the studio doors were wide open, so down she goes, like Mrs. Bloody Mop, with a night dress on. I said, what happened? I stood in the doorway, they all went dead quiet.
I'm not surprised.
And they went, oh, what's wrong? And next day they apologised. Not that we worried too much, you know, because they are rock stars.
So Alan White was set up here, where we usually put the drum when we did the Stone Roses as well. Rennie was here, they faced down that way so they can see the rest of the band.
Nick Brine was just 18 years old when Oasis were here.
Obviously this is the centrepiece of the room, which everybody asks about because it's Don't Look Back in Anger piano.
So Oasis would have been behind that glass there.
Yeah.
They would have been making What's the Story, Morning Glory.
Yeah.
You would have been here working on the desk. Can you tell us about what that was like, having them in the studio, you're here, that relationship?
We recorded it so fast. I mean, for one of the biggest albums of all time, it's one of the fastest recorded albums that I've ever been involved in.
When you heard they were getting back together, I mean, you probably had a bit of an inside track anyway. Were you surprised?
Yeah, yes and no. I mean, obviously, it's one of the questions I've been asked for years and years. Will they ever get back together? Yeah. And I've, you know, asked the question to Noel and kind of people around them before. And I always thought if they got back together, it's still going to be amazing. It's fantastic, isn't it? You know, we need more bands like Oasis. Yeah. And it's hard to be a band like Oasis nowadays in today's business, really. So I don't think there'll ever be another one.
Nick Brine there. And you can see more from Charlotte in a special live stream on Friday. She'll be in Cardiff with Tina Daly and Jason Mohammed, bringing you all the build-up and the reaction. Watch live from 1 p.m. on iPlayer. Right, let's get the weather, shall we? Sabrina is here. Hi, Sabrina. How's it looking?
Hi Nick. Well, it's been a bright, fresher feeling day for many of us. Now this week, if some of you have been keeping up with the UK or European news, the heat has very much been the talking point. Here in Wales, for the vast majority of us, we did not reach the heatwave threshold. The only exception was locally in Monmouthshire, where we got to 26 Celsius, at least for 3 days in a row. But those temperatures will continue to slip away. So here's a recap then. So we started off very warm or hot for many on Monday. It is fresher now that a cold front has gone through, and those temperatures will continue to slip away as the week wears on. So this evening then we're left with some late sunshine, overnight some long clear skies, a little bit of patchy cloud here and there that could trigger a few isolated showers. There shouldn't be too much of a breeze, and now that it's less humid, I think more of you will find it more comfortable for sleeping. Overnight lows at 7 to 11 Celsius. Tomorrow then we're off to a bright start, more in the way of sunshine. Patchy fair weather cloud will tend to bubble up, especially tomorrow afternoon. That will trigger a few showers. Most of those will be through the Irish Sea, but some of those will probably get into parts of North Wales too, but very much few and far between. Not too much of a breeze around, and those daytime highs at 17 to 23 Celsius. On Friday then, the next cold front will move through. So think of that as bringing some fresher conditions, but also more in the way of cloud. So looking at Friday then in more detail, we're probably going to start on a fairly bright note, but that cloud will tend to increase as the day wears on. Out of that thickest cloud, we'll probably squeeze out some patchy rain and drizzle. Also, the winds will pick up. Those are coming up from the southwest, with daytime highs around 17 to 23 Celsius. Looking at the outlook then, this weekend I think we're going to see a fair amount of cloud actually. There should be some sunny spells at times, but generally speaking at this stage the brightness looks quite limited. And again, out of that thickest cloud we'll squeeze out some patchy rain and drizzle, but it's not going to be a washout, with those temperatures typically in the mid to upper teens or in the warmer spots into the low 20s. And then looking further out to the week ahead next week, a ridge of high pressure looks to build in. That should settle things down, but at times a few showers still expected. That's your latest. See you soon. Nick.
OK, Sabrina, thanks very much. That's Wales Today. I'll be back after the 10 o'clock news. Hope you can join me then. Till then, thanks for watching. Have a good evening.